Some of us were taught that being a woman means always being soft, always understanding, always forgiving, always shrinking so others can feel comfortable. But somewhere along the way, that softness turned into silence. It turned into tolerating what should have been confronted. It turned into carrying burdens that were never yours to hold. And today, I want to talk to the woman who is tired of smiling through disrespect, tired of dimming her voice, tired of pretending that being strong somehow makes her less feminine. Because the truth is, strength does not cancel your womanhood. It confirms it. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she has to decide, am I going to keep being the version of myself that keeps everyone else comfortable? Or am I finally going to become the version of myself that God actually called me to be? So if you've been told you're too much, too bold, too vocal, too unwilling to tolerate what used to break you, then maybe, just maybe, you're not becoming difficult. Maybe you're becoming free. Today's message is for every woman who is ready to stop confusing weakness with kindness, stop apologizing for her strength, and stop being a soft woman in a world that requires her to stand firm. Let's talk about it. Softness is often praised as one of the most beautiful qualities a woman can have. From a young age, many women are taught to be gentle, patient, forgiving, and understanding. They are told that kindness is strength and that maintaining peace is noble. But somewhere along the journey, this message becomes distorted. What begins as kindness slowly turns into silence. What begins as patience slowly turns into tolerance of things that should never be tolerated. And before a woman even realizes it, the softness that once made her compassionate begins to make her vulnerable to disrespect. Many women confuse being kind with being endlessly accommodating. They believe that saying yes makes them good people, and that speaking up somehow makes them difficult. So they swallow their opinions, they overlook small acts of disrespect. They ignore the moments when their boundaries are crossed because they do not want to create conflict. But the truth is, every time a boundary is ignored without being addressed, it quietly teaches others how they are allowed to treat you. Disrespect rarely begins as something big or obvious. It usually starts in small ways. A comment that makes you uncomfortable, but you laugh off anyway. Someone dismissing your feelings and you telling yourself it's not a big deal. Someone repeatedly taking advantage of your time, your energy, or your generosity. These moments seem small, but when they go unchecked, they slowly build a pattern, and patterns create permission. When a woman continues to tolerate what hurts her in the name of being soft or understanding, she unintentionally trains people to believe that her boundaries are flexible or non-existent. People begin to assume she will always forgive, always adjust, always make room for their behavior. And over time, what started as kindness becomes a doorway through which disrespect freely walks in. The truth that many women must confront is that softness without boundaries does not create respect. It often invites the opposite. When people sense that someone is unwilling to speak up or unwilling to walk away, they may begin to push further and further, not always out of cruelty, but out of human nature. People test limits, and when there are no limits, they keep going. This is why boundaries are not signs of coldness or hostility. Boundaries are signs of self-respect. They are quiet declarations that say, I value myself enough to protect my peace. A woman can still be compassionate, generous, and loving while also being firm about what she will and will not accept. Strength does not cancel kindness. It protects it. Many women fear that setting boundaries will make them appear harsh or unlikable. They worry that people will see them as difficult or confrontational. But what they often fail to realize is that the people who benefit most from their silence are the same people who will feel uncomfortable when they finally speak up. And that discomfort is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is simply a sign that the dynamic is changing. Learning to establish boundaries is not about becoming aggressive or defensive. It is about becoming clear. It is about understanding that your feelings matter, your time matters, your energy matters, and the moment you begin to treat those things as valuable, other people will start to recognize their value too. There is also an important difference between being soft-hearted and being soft-spoken in situations that require firmness. A soft heart means you care deeply about others and wish them well. But a soft voice in the face of repeated disrespect can slowly erase your presence in your own life. Strength sometimes means saying the uncomfortable truth. Strength sometimes means refusing to laugh off behavior that hurts you. Strength sometimes means walking away from environments where your kindness is constantly exploited. Respect is rarely demanded loudly. More often, it is communicated quietly through standards, through the way you respond to behavior, through the things you allow and the things you refuse to tolerate. When people see that a woman is calm but firm, kind but clear, loving but unwilling to accept mistreatment, they begin to understand that her softness is not weakness, it is a choice. And choices can change. It is also important to recognize that developing boundaries is a process. Many women were never taught how to do this. They were taught to be agreeable, accommodating, and self-sacrificing. They were taught that keeping the peace was more important than protecting themselves. So when they first begin to assert themselves, it can feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. They may second-guess their decisions or feel guilty for speaking up. But growth often begins with discomfort. The first time you say, "That hurt me," it may feel awkward. The first time you say, "I'm not okay with that," your voice may shake. The first time you walk away from something that no longer serves you, you may question whether you are being too harsh. Yet each of those moments is a step toward reclaiming your dignity. The goal is not to become hard or bitter. The goal is to become balanced, to remain compassionate without becoming a target, to remain loving without losing your self-respect, to remain patient without accepting behavior that erodes your well-being. A woman does not lose her femininity when she develops boundaries. In many ways, she strengthens it, because true grace is not found in endless tolerance. True grace is found in knowing when to extend kindness and when to protect yourself. Softness is beautiful when it exists alongside strength. A gentle spirit paired with a strong sense of self creates a presence that is both warm and powerful. It allows a woman to uplift others without diminishing herself. It allows her to care deeply without being consumed by other people's expectations. The world does not need women who silence themselves to keep others comfortable. The world needs women who are kind but courageous, compassionate but confident, soft in heart but firm in spirit. Because when softness stands alone without boundaries, it often invites disrespect. But when softness is protected by self-respect, it becomes something entirely different. It becomes a quiet kind of power, one that refuses to shrink, refuses to be taken for granted, and refuses to allow kindness to be mistaken for weakness. For a long time, many women have been given a quiet but powerful message about what femininity is supposed to look like. They are told that being feminine means being gentle, agreeable, nurturing, and soft. These qualities are beautiful and meaningful, but the problem begins when strength is portrayed as the opposite of femininity. When a woman speaks firmly, stands her ground, or refuses to tolerate disrespect, she is sometimes labeled as difficult, intimidating, or too much. Over time, this creates the false belief that in order to remain feminine, a woman must always be soft and accommodating. But strength and femininity were never meant to cancel each other out. In fact, they were designed to coexist. A woman can be compassionate and still be courageous. She can be nurturing and still be assertive. She can be gentle in spirit while standing firm in her values. True femininity is not weakness, it is balance. It is the ability to care deeply without losing the power to protect yourself. Many women grow up believing that raising their voice or asserting themselves somehow makes them less graceful. So they try to remain quiet even when something inside them is urging them to speak. They downplay their intelligence, their opinions, and their ambitions because they do not want to be seen as aggressive. They shrink parts of themselves in order to fit into an image of femininity that was never meant to limit them. The truth is that strength often reveals a woman's true character. It shows that she understands her worth. It shows that she has learned from her experiences, and it shows that she refuses to allow circumstances or other people's expectations to define her identity. Strength is not about dominating others or proving superiority. It is about having the courage to stand in your truth even when it is uncomfortable. A strong woman does not abandon kindness. She simply refuses to confuse kindness with self-neglect. She understands that loving others should never require her to abandon herself. She understands that being respectful does not mean accepting disrespect in return. And she recognizes that protecting her peace is not selfish, it is necessary. There is a quiet confidence that comes from a woman who has learned to combine strength with grace. She does not need to prove her power through loud arguments or constant confrontation. Instead, her strength is seen in the calm way she sets boundaries. It is seen in the way she walks away from situations that diminish her. It is seen in the way she refuses to settle for less than what aligns with her values. Unfortunately, society often sends mixed messages to women about strength. On one hand, women are encouraged to be independent, ambitious, and confident. On the other hand, when they fully embrace those qualities, they may face criticism for being intimidating or unfeminine. This contradiction can create internal conflict, making women feel as though they must constantly choose between being respected and being accepted. But a woman does not have to sacrifice one part of herself to preserve another. Strength does not erase her femininity. Instead, it protects it. When a woman is strong, she is better able to create healthy relationships, pursue meaningful goals, and protect the life she is building. Her strength becomes a foundation that allows her kindness and compassion to exist without being taken advantage of. True femininity is not fragile. It is resilient, it adapts, grows, and rises even in difficult circumstances. Throughout history and everyday life, women have demonstrated incredible strength while still embodying warmth and empathy. They have carried families through hardships, built careers in challenging environments, and continue to uplift others even while facing their own struggles. Strength in a woman is not something that appears overnight. It is often shaped through experiences that test her patience, challenge her confidence, and force her to confront her fears. Each difficult moment becomes a lesson. Each setback becomes a reminder that she is capable of more than she once believed. Over time, these experiences build a quiet resilience that becomes part of who she is. A strong woman learns that her voice matters. She learns that her opinions deserve to be heard. She learns that her boundaries are not barriers to love, but protections for her well-being. And most importantly, she learns that she does not need permission to stand firmly in her identity. There is also something deeply empowering about a woman who embraces both her softness and her strength. She does not feel pressured to choose between them. She allows herself to feel emotions, to care deeply about people, and to show compassion where it is needed. At the same time, she remains grounded in her values and refuses to let others define her limits. This balance creates a presence that is both comforting and powerful. People feel her warmth, but they also recognize her self-respect. They understand that her kindness is genuine, not a sign of weakness. They see that her strength is not about control, but about integrity. When women begin to embrace this balance, something important shifts. They stop apologizing for qualities that make them capable leaders, thinkers, and decision makers. They stop minimizing their achievements to make others feel comfortable. And they stop believing that confidence somehow makes them less approachable or less feminine. Instead, they begin to walk with a new sense of purpose. They recognize that their strength allows them to create meaningful change, not only in their own lives, but in the lives of those around them. They become examples for younger generations who are watching and learning what it means to be a woman in a world full of expectations. Young girls who see strong women learn that they do not have to silence themselves to be accepted. They learn that ambition is not something to hide. They learn that compassion and courage can exist side by side. And they learn that femininity is not a narrow definition, but a broad and powerful identity that can take many forms. Strength and femininity were never meant to compete with each other. They are two qualities that, when combined, create something remarkable. They create women who are capable of loving deeply while standing firmly. Women who can nurture others while pursuing their own dreams. Women who can show grace in difficult moments without losing their sense of self. A woman does not stop being feminine when she becomes strong. In many ways, she becomes more fully herself. She stops pretending to be smaller than she is. She stops allowing fear of judgment to control her choices. And she begins to live with the confidence that comes from knowing she can be both gentle and powerful at the same time. Because the truth is simple but powerful, strength and femininity were never opposites. They are partners. And when a woman allows both to exist within her, she becomes unstoppable. There comes a turning point in many women's lives when something inside them begins to shift. It does not always happen loudly or dramatically. Sometimes it begins quietly after years of experiences that slowly reshape the way a woman sees herself. Moments of disappointment, betrayal, exhaustion, or realization start to add up. And eventually, she reaches a place where she begins to see her own value in a way she never fully did before. When that moment arrives, something powerful changes. A woman who truly knows her worth stops tolerating the things that once broke her. For a long time, many women stay in situations that drain them emotionally because they believe patience will eventually fix everything. They give second chances, then third chances, and sometimes far more than that. They hold on to relationships, environments, or expectations that slowly wear them down because they hope things will improve. They tell themselves that love requires sacrifice and that loyalty means staying even when their peace is constantly disturbed. But when a woman begins to understand her worth, she starts seeing those situations through a different lens. She realizes that love should not require her to constantly abandon herself. She recognizes that loyalty should not mean tolerating repeated disrespect. And she begins to understand that protecting her well-being is not an act of selfishness, but an act of self-respect. Knowing your worth does not mean believing you are better than anyone else. It means recognizing that your feelings, time, energy, and emotional well-being matter. It means understanding that you deserve to be treated with the same level of respect and care that you offer to others. Once this realization takes root, it becomes very difficult to return to the old patterns of acceptance that once caused so much pain. Many women have memories of times when they stayed silent in moments they should have spoken up, times when they ignored red flags because they wanted to believe the best in someone, times when they minimized their own pain in order to keep a relationship or avoid confrontation. These experiences can leave emotional scars, but they also carry valuable lessons. Pain, although difficult, often becomes a powerful teacher. It shows a woman what she should never accept again. It reveals the cost of ignoring her own instincts. And over time, it builds a quiet awareness that says, I deserve better than this. That awareness is the beginning of transformation. A woman who knows her worth begins to notice things she once overlooked. She becomes more aware of how people speak to her, how they treat her time, and whether their actions align with their words. She pays attention to patterns rather than excuses. And when she recognizes behavior that once hurt her deeply, she responds differently than she did before. Instead of explaining away someone's disrespect, she addresses it. Instead of repeatedly forgiving behavior that never changes, she begins to create distance. Instead of chasing validation from people who fail to appreciate her, she redirects her energy toward environments and relationships that nurture her growth. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if a woman has spent years prioritizing other people's needs above her own. She may worry that she is becoming cold or unforgiving. She may question whether she is being too harsh. But what she is actually doing is redefining her standards. Standards are not walls built to keep people away. They are filters that allow the right people to stay. When a woman raises her standards, she is not rejecting love or connection. She is simply choosing connections that are built on mutual respect rather than imbalance. There is also a quiet confidence that begins to grow within a woman who understands her worth. She no longer feels the need to prove herself to people who refuse to see her value. She stops chasing approval from those who consistently overlook her efforts, and she becomes more selective about where she invests her emotional energy. This does not mean her heart becomes closed. In fact, many women find that knowing their worth allows them to love more freely and honestly. The difference is that they no longer accept treatment that damages their sense of self. They recognize that healthy relationships should uplift, support, and respect both people involved. One of the most powerful signs that a woman has recognized her worth is her willingness to walk away when necessary. Walking away does not always mean leaving dramatically or with anger. Sometimes it simply means choosing peace over chaos. It means stepping back from situations that repeatedly cause pain, even when doing so is difficult. Walking away can be one of the hardest decisions a woman makes, especially when emotions and memories are involved, but it is also one of the clearest demonstrations of self-respect. It shows that she values her emotional well-being enough to remove herself from patterns that no longer serve her. Over time, this mindset begins to reshape every part of her life. She becomes more intentional about the relationships she builds. She becomes more protective of her time and energy. And she becomes more confident in the decisions she makes because they are guided by a deeper understanding of who she is and what she deserves. People around her may notice the change. Some will admire her strength and respect her boundaries. Others may feel uncomfortable because they were used to the version of her that tolerated everything without question. But growth often changes dynamics, and that change is not something to fear. A woman who knows her worth is no longer defined by the expectations that once limited her. She begins to create a life that reflects her values rather than other people's demands. She learns to trust her instincts more deeply and to listen to the quiet voice within her that guides her toward healthier choices. Perhaps most importantly, she begins to forgive herself for the time she accepted less than she deserved. She understands that those moments were part of her learning process. They were chapters in her story, not the final definition of her identity. The woman she is becoming is wiser, stronger, and more self-aware. She carries the lessons of her past, but she no longer allows those lessons to trap her in cycles of pain. Instead, they become reminders of how far she has come and why she will never settle for less again. When a woman truly knows her worth, her standards change, her boundaries become clearer, and her choices reflect a deeper level of self-respect. She no longer tolerates the things that once broke her because she understands that her peace, dignity, and emotional health are too valuable to sacrifice. And that realization becomes one of the most powerful transformations a woman can experience because once she truly sees her own value, she cannot unsee it. From that moment forward, she begins to live, love, and choose differently, guided by the quiet but unshakable knowledge that she deserves better.